Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of Monday, May the 9th. Thank you all for being here tonight. I do wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the territory of the Sooke and Sioux nations. Before we get into tonight's agenda, though, I'm just going to give a shout out to some youth members of the Sooke Sailing Association. So we've learned that this past weekend, we had members of our community travel to Prince George to attend the District Six Qualifiers, and this is for the 2022 BC Summer Games. Or sorry, they competed to qualify, and they did. So we had two local 15-year-old Sooke boys qualify. They will receive official letters, at which time their names will be public. They have been asked to attend the summer games and to compete in the C-420 sailing class. This is a single boat, double handled racing event. So it's pretty exciting that to hear this news. This is something that can lead to national Commonwealth Games and Olympic game competitions. And the Sooke Sailing Association has over 350 participants learning about water safety and how to sail. And they did start this race team. So this has allowed that generation of youth to compete and to travel. So congratulations to them and much success in the future. So that's really exciting. Way to go. So on that note, everyone, I now wish to look for council's approval of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, your first item up are public and statutory hearings, of which there is no public hearing. There is just a development permit in front of us, so that comes up right away. It's having some technical difficulties, so bear with me here. So this is just moving. Okay, so item 6.1 is a development permit with variance for 2063 Townsend Road. So I'll turn this over to staff to take us through this report.
Thank you. Okay, that works now. All right, this development permit with variance application is to permit development of 7 ground-oriented multifamily dwelling units at 2063 Townsend Road with a variance request to 0 meters setback from the northerly lot line. Subject property is zoned town center mixed use, and cluster dwelling units is a permitted principal use in that zone. Although the CTC zone permits 0 meter lot line setbacks, when a neighboring property falls within the existing housing area as shown on the town center plan map, then the setback is required at 4.5 meters. The neighbor to the north falls within that existing housing area, which is why the variance is before council. The impact to the affected neighbor to the north will be minimized by the proposed design of the dwelling units, meaning there's no windows proposed along the rear of the buildings. A new wooden screening fence and landscaping is to be provided as well. The neighbor is aware of the variance request and has no concerns. More stringent building code requirements for fire separation will apply, such as sprinklers, non-combustible fire curtain walls, which the developer is aware of. The CTC zone permits cluster dwelling units as a principal permitted use. Cluster dwelling is defined as 1 dwelling unit or 2 dwelling units within the same building, which are on the same lot as at least 4 other dwelling units. The proposed residential units are therefore considered cluster dwelling units. The proposed development will provide residential intensification in the form of rental housing and is infill that is respectful of the current neighborhood context. With exception of the variance to the north property line, all other zoning bylaw regulations such as parking, screening, landscaping, use, lot coverage, and refuse removal areas have been satisfied. Proposed development meets the development permit guidelines within development permit area 1, which is our town center, and development permit area 3, which is the multifamily residential. Along the front property line adjacent to Townsend Road, there will be a 1.2 meter high rock and wood screening fence, as well as a 1.5 meter width of landscaping. This provides a private and public use separation and creates a pleasant pedestrian experience. Refuse and recycling is within an enclosed building on the site. The 7 dwelling units will be 1 story high, with each unit having 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and no stairs. All units will be rentals and can be designed or retrofitted to accommodate accessible features for barrier-free living. The applicant has applied a low carbon resilience lens to the development by providing the following: increasing the supply of rental housing and providing housing that can easily support accessible barrier-free living. 6 of the 11 parking stalls will be electric vehicle ready. That's a support of infill development, designing the roofs to be engineered solar ready, installing green roofs on the refuse and recycling building and on each of the canopy main entrances of the dwelling units. Last, providing 15 new trees on the site with specific attention to a treed focal point at the end of the laneway. Additional landscaping will be planted along property lines to create a vegetative buffer between parking spaces and property lines and between private patios and other property lines. That staff recommends approval of this development permit with variance with the conditions proposed in the staff report. I believe the applicant and the owner are also available for questions. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. I'll look to see if members of council have any questions from staff for staff. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship, to staff, I was reading in the report that higher density was also encouraged. However, cluster dwelling was permitted and was obviously chosen as the way to go. I would note, obviously, from the ortho, the satellite photos, that the area actually has quite a few larger buildings, including, Shoppers Drug Mart and so on and so forth. What is the actual FAR or density or height that's permissible in that area?
So specifically to this parcel with respect to lot coverage?
Yeah.
Is that?
What sort of density what will be the maximum density permitted under our present bylaws and zoning?
So you could have in the CTC zone 6 stories up to 22 meters in height and a maximum lot coverage of 85%. So within the current zone, we don't have a specified floor area ratio, but between those two, density for height and lot coverage, those configurations of 6 stories and 85% lot coverage.
Okay. What does the new OCP would also be along the same lines? Is that correct?
Within the new official community plan, there would be for the town center similar heights as well as a floor area ratio calculation that could be adapted as well. That is something that would have to be determined through the official community plan review process, and then upon adoption, we would have to take a look at the zoning bylaw as well. So until such time as the zoning bylaw is amended, we would still be following the regulations that we have for the CTC zone.
Right, and I believe that it was mentioned that we still don't have a minimum density, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm curious as to whether or not I noticed a lot of the low carbon resilience things, and I was wondering if the applicants had considered some way of actually managing stormwater on property simply by putting it into a sink or some sort of rain garden type of thing. Or is that already in the plans? I didn't see it there, but.
So as part of the design drawing review, those packages will be submitted to engineering for review at the time of building permit. So that may be a component of that. Overall, the landscaping plan addresses the aesthetics of what you would see on the site in terms of vegetation and buffering.
Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Patel. In terms of parking, okay, we have the zoning bylaw calls for 1.5 spaces per unit. So we have 7 units here, so 11 spaces. However, I know 2 of them are for visitors and 2 are disabled spaces. How does that play out?
So given that there isn't the distinction in calculations for visitor parking, that's generally a proposal that the applicant includes. So the minimum parking requirements must be met, and then based on how they see those stalls should be designated will be based on the accessible visitor parking, small car stalls and the like. The main concern that we review with the site plan upon submission is that they meet those minimum requirements, and then from there determine what is necessary. So general expectations would be that you would have at least one stall available per unit unless you could justify otherwise. But overall, the criteria being whatever the zoning bylaw minimum is, that they provide it in some form and fashion. This instance, they've actually provided, in addition to that minimum requirement, the 6 EV ready stalls as well.
Was there a reason there wasn't 100% EV ready stalls? Perhaps I could put this through to the applicant.
Welcome. If you could please just turn on the microphone and introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Joe Kalenda. I'm with Multobany Enterprises and I'm representing the applicants on the application. Yeah, the 6 EV stalls are what was recommended by staff as a condition, and we simply accepted that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know staff were seeking greater density here. Did any attempts at land assembly happen for this project?
No, well, land assembly is fairly difficult, as you know, but I will tell you when I first met the owners, we spent 3 hours talking about land, residentially designated land. It's a scarce and diminishing resource. God isn't making any more of it, so it's incumbent upon you when you develop or redevelop. You need to go as intensive as you can, given the OCP and given your ability to build whatever it is you want to build. So we did have a 3-hour discussion about why 8 units, because this was originally an 8 cluster unit development, as opposed to perhaps 32 units or whatever else. And it's really a matter of it's this development that this developer can actually do at this time. So this will be their first development in Sooke, hopefully not the last, but this is the one they're most comfortable with at this time. Although I recognize the land is still scarce. And so if you underdevelop for a long time, but there it is. You know.
Thank you. So back to Mr. Powell quickly, just for education regarding the new development permit area guidelines.
Perhaps say draft because it's not
Draft,
new. It's
exactly.
a draft
Thank
OCP.
Very good point. So the draft, the second, third draft, whatever we're at the moment, could you give me some sense of where this project fits and where it would need some upgrades if these new development permit guidelines go through?
So as it stands, while we have draft development permit guidelines currently available following first reading, the zoning bylaw regulations are the key piece for implementing this type of project. So until such time as the zoning bylaw is reviewed and updated to incorporate those design elements such as number of stories, site coverage, floor area ratio, this application, if clustered dwelling units remains as a permitted use in this zone, this application would come forward as is. And so at that point, we would just be evaluating the design guidelines against the zoning bylaw as well. And so that's where we would have to point out where we would encourage the applicant to follow specific design guidelines. However, the zoning bylaw as a regulatory tool to implement their proposed development would have more teeth in moving this forward. So I would anticipate until such time as the zoning bylaw was amended to correspond with the development permit guidelines, what you see is potentially what could then come forward with the new OCP adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for staff or the applicant? Just a few, just some takeaways to consider is that because it's low barrier and single story, it would be attractive for anyone with a mobility issue. You could potentially have all of these units lease to to anyone needing an accessible suite. So just with the parking configuration, it may be that just to make them as wide as possible so that you don't have everyone either stuck in their car or competing for the few spaces that are there. And also if there was some way for some form of secure bike lockup, depending on where folks ride, you don't necessarily want to bring your bicycle into your home. But it could be, unfortunately, bicycle theft happens in our community too. So even if it was, if they were tied onto a porch or something, they could still be targeted. So if there's any way to make that more secure, then then folks may not need the stall for parking at all if some are able in this area to get around by bike. It's certainly walkable distance, but for those wanting to get further or maybe have a family and get a cargo bike to transport their children, they would just need a safe location to do that. So it's just takeaways just to make it more, for the changing needs. And even if you had a young mother needing to get her child in a car seat out of a car, the accessible, the width is very helpful to do that, because anything that's smaller, it just gets challenging to get the child out. Speaking from experience, because you're just stuck in there depending on how close the other vehicle, so that they're not trapped. It just makes it more family orientated. So just some takeaways there. Okay, Councillor St. Pierre, can you turn off your microphone unless you had a follow-up question? Okay, there's just feedback when it goes to the lines. So just remember, councillors, to do that. You have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do
Go ahead.
actually, and it's just a question to our applicants. So welcome to Sooke. Thanks for choosing Sooke. Can you give us a bit of background on your company? And
Okay, so my company is.
no, I know you're representing these gentlemen. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. No, so my company, Multo Bene Enterprise, it's a city consulting company. So I'm not a developer per se. I just help these guys get their applications approved. Do you want to know more about my company or their? Well, my name is Joe Kalenda. I've been a city planner since 1976. I've worked in Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia. I retired in 2008 here in Victoria. My last posting was in Colwood as their CAO, 1999 to 2005, I think. Then I moved to Aurelia, and then when I came back to Victoria, I retired in 2008, started Multo Bene Enterprises, helping folks get their subdivisions and zone changes and that. And in 2010, I was assigned to the District of Merritt as their interim CAO. They were in between. In 2018, 2019, I did Port Alberni as their interim director of planning and development. They were in between. And then from November 15th of 2021 till April 29th of 2022, I was in the city of White Rock as their interim director of planning and development services. So I'm back a week and a half, and I'm really tired because it was a really heavy 6 months there. And yeah, so I'm basically a retired city planner, and I do that stuff, Yeah. Thank you.
And in terms of
The actual developers, they are from Kamloops. They've started developing in Victoria, CRD, a number of years ago, I think maybe 9 years ago. And they've done a variety of projects, a few single family houses, a few multi-family developments and so on, but they're kind of brand new, and Jason and Patrick are just sort of growing. They were originally in the hotel business in Kamloops, and now they're in the development business in the Capital Regional District. Okay, you're welcome.
Can you share the company name with us?
That would be lovely, yeah. I hardly know this guy. I just know. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Patel, originally from Kamloops, BC. Started my company off, actually a little bit of background on me. Background's architectural and building engineering. That's what I went to school for at BCIT and which not. Grew up in Kamloops, and 2008 built my first home. 2010 I became a registered builder. 2011 I joined the Canadian Home Builders Association, won awards with them and which not. And then family kind of grew, right? So my brother Patrick, right behind me, he moved to Victoria, and shortly after I followed. we grew up as a family orientation. So that's what we did. We came out here and bought our first property right behind the Parliament building. We built a 5-unit townhouse complex back there on Toronto Street. And from there, we've done multiple single family developments. We've done a couple of subdivisions in Saanich as well. And done a subdivision out in Langford as well. And now we're out in Sooke, and we have other properties as well in Saanich. And that's kind of what we do. So,
Can you share your company name?
sorry, company name JP Creations. Yeah, so been around since 2010. I've won awards with Canadian Home Builders Association in the interior as well. So I've been around. So new to the island though, about 6
Excellent.
years, and yeah. So
Welcome to Sooke. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
And one more one.
Sure.
So we're sticking to the application, right? I was just wondering, you were drawn to Sooke. Could you, as we go through this community planning exercise, what do you see for our town center?
What do I see? I see growth, right? We wouldn't have been here otherwise, right? Like I said, this particular property, it's nothing that we're gonna build and sell. We're sitting on it, right? So we're building it. It's for family, right? It's family orientation. I got 3 boys. My brother's got 2 daughters, right? It's just what we are. That's how our parents raised us, and that's what we plan to do, right? We're here to work with the municipalities, no matter where we go, and grow with them.
Just a quick question vis-a-vis the application itself.
Yep, for sure.
Obviously, we're interested at this point in getting, more density, and we talked about that a little bit and so on and so forth. Is there anything the district could have done, or anything that would have changed things for you in terms of, adding the additional storage?
Higher
and so on?
density,
Is there anything that could have been different?
I think it's just, for me, it's more of like a job security thing, right? Like I just, like I said, this property is gonna stay with us, right? It's easy for us to come back in 20 years or something like that, 10 years from now, and change it again, right? The infrastructure is not crazy on it, right? We're planning crazy things on it, but we've been talking to Tara about it, planning and which not, and we've been talking for, I think, roughly a year and a half. Yeah, close to 2 years we've owned this property, and we've seen it. Like we know the fire department's been there, and we dealt with it right away as soon as we found out, right? Like it's been a problem property for a while, and we're doing our best to clean it up, and we could only work as fast as we're given permission to, right? But yeah, sure.
Thank you for answering those other questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the recommendation here then is that council authorize the issuance of development permit with variance PLN 01505 for 2063 Townsend Road, a permit to reduce the northerly side lot setback from 4.5 meters to 0 meters, and to allow for the development of 7 multifamily dwelling units. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments, Councillor Logan's? St. Pierre? Comments from anyone else? Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, it's a nice little development. I'm not thrilled with the location because it's kind of the dead center in the middle of our town center. But our zoning allows it, so we'll let it go.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much for your time today, and good luck with your project. Okay, next up, we have item 7. It is adoption of meeting minutes. So we'll do those as a block. We have the March 21st Committee of the Whole, April 11th regular meeting, April 19th Committee of the Whole, April 25th regular council meeting. Move adoption by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Questions or corrections? Anyone have anything? There's a correction? Uh-oh. We may, it wasn't a typo or anything. Well, we want to get it right before we adopt, and you're always good at catching them. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Do let me know though if you find.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that brings us to item 8, report of the chief administrative officer. So before I turn to the new face or returning face in the gallery, you likely all would know that our CAO Norm McInnis is on extended leave now. He did share that he is battling cancer, and I thank him for sharing that. And I'll say it's because it dispels gossip, and it's sad that that's the situation, but he also provides strength to those that are also having the same challenge out there. And I think it's always, we're seeing more and more, particularly men, speak about the challenges that they have. And I think that's a real change. And I think it's important going forward that we all as humans feel that we can share where we're at in journeys. Council is standing strong with Norm, and we wish to extend our most heartfelt thanks to him and his family, both those here in Sooke and those in other parts of the province, and we wish him the very best. Some of you may recognize our returning face, which is Mr. Don Schaffer. Don Schaffer joined this council back in late 2018, early 2019, I think, as our interim CAO then. Mr. Schaffer stayed with us until Mr. McInnis joined us in July of 2019. And so we're very pleased that he was available on short notice to return to the district. Mr. Schaffer lives close by in Metchosin, so at least we didn't have to pull him out of Puskapay or some other area in the province. He was available, and we're just grateful that he's able to join us and brings a wealth of experience that he has back to the district. So turn it over to Mr. Schaffer, please.
Thank you. I don't have an extensive report, having been here for a total of 6 days since my return, but I did want to thank council for the opportunity to come back, and we've had a number of really successful meetings heading into this, culminating, I believe, with the open house on Saturday. There were a lot of people. There was a lot of feedback. We learned a lot, and we're going to learn more, because that is not the end of the consultation process with the public or with council. And I'm just looking forward to working with council on the challenges of the next several months. I'm tempted to hand off to Mr. Paolo to see if he has any further feedback on the event that happened on Saturday, if that's okay with you.
Sure, probably just not on the agenda, so you're going to want to keep it very high level, Mr. Powell. Okay.
No, I just want to extend my thanks to all members of the public who were able to come out and participate. It just kind of shows that ongoing journey that we had dating back 18 months when we started off this process. So it's really informative. I think with the topic discussions that council heard about on March 21st of this year at the Committee of the Whole, that we were able to take that conversation out to the public to get more feedback. And that conversation, as Mr. Schaffer had said, continues on. And of course, as we move forward with that, the public hearing is, again, another opportunity for the public to hear, at least in terms of a scheduled bylaw process, but it's ongoing. Next week, we're going to be having what we call the chapter review of the official community plan, where we get to have more information discussions on these pieces, and ultimately the public will be able to see how this process continues to evolve based on their input and how that relates to a bylaw process. So that's all I have to share at this time, and look forward to more discussion on what everybody heard at the open house.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paolo and Mr. Schaffer. Anything further at this time? No. Okay. All right, so that moves us into item 9. Get my glasses. It's the public question and comment period. So this section here is reserved for all matters on the agenda, except for those that had a public. I didn't do that actually. The development permit with variance should have had public input as part of that, and I missed that. and we've made a resolution, but I'll still look if public does wish to comment. It would be inappropriate not to allow you to. So we'll leave it at that. My apologies for missing that. Nobody else around the table counted either, so we're all in this, we all own this stake together. Okay, so public comment and comment period. And you would have 2 minutes, and please just introduce yourself and turn on the microphone so we can all hear you, please.
Hi, my name is Britt Santowski and I live in Sooke. And regarding the public comment, I echo what Dana said, Councillor Lejeunesse, that I would like to see density in height happen in the town core as well. It's always a shame when it doesn't. For public input, I would like to talk to item 11.2, and that is chamber asking for funding. The reason why we're asking so early is that was a recommendation that came out of last year's BEA. And I did try to hit council before the end of the budget, the last cycle, and I missed it by 1 day. So that's why we're in this. We're still fine tuning the process. It's going to be an award event at a theater instead of a dinner, and we're looking at bringing in entertainment. And since I submitted the request to you guys, we are tiering the sponsorship from 400. There's a 400, there's a 600, there's a 1,000, a 1,500, and 2,000 sponsorships. And if you want your name on a trophy, it is the 600 and above. And then it comes with tickets and then ranges of recognition. That again hasn't been finalized. So I can send you the draft, but it's got to go through the committee at chamber. So that's it. If you have any questions when you're discussing it.
Just ask a quick question. So like no food?
No, it's going to be entertainment. We are going to have intermission, and Karen is insisting that wine will be there. So we will have wine and we will have appies and some stuff catered as well, but it won't be a sit down dinner. It'll be an awards with entertainment so that everybody walks away fulfilled. We're looking at getting maybe a comedian in. So yeah, it's going to be completely different. Very exciting.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Santowski. Other members of the public this evening? Call for a second time. Third and final time. That would conclude all public speaking opportunities in the agenda for tonight, except for clarity when we may need to hear from an applicant. Okay. All right then, moving along, please. Okay. So that brings us to our consent agenda is item 10. The recommendation here would be that the correspondence from March the 4th through May the 4th, 2022 be received and filed accordingly. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. So nobody's pulling anything out of the block. Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, and that brings us to our report section. For this first one up then is 11.1, the District of Sooke Audited 2021 Financial Statements. So I'll turn this over to Ms. Gray, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff are pleased to present to you the draft audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021. The financial statements have received a clean audit opinion. And just due to the timing, the deadlines, staff will be presenting a deep dive analysis on the 2021 results at the June 13th council meeting with the quarterly one update that'll be presented at the same time. To speak to the draft audited financial statements, Lenora Lee is here from KPMG, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Ms. Gray, and welcome.
Great, thank you. I'll just touch on a couple highlights from our audit process and the audit findings. We have substantially completed our audit and have prepared a clean auditor's report, which indicates that the financial statements present fairly in accordance with public sector accounting standards. We have not noted any material errors within them, and any recommendations and adjustments that we had have been incorporated into the draft financial statements that are before you in your package tonight. As part of our audit process, we do focus on significant streams of transactions such as capital assets, developer donated assets, government transfers, deferred revenue, and developer cost charges. In the 2021 financial statements, there were no changes to the accounting standards or audit standards that were implemented in the current year. We have not noted any significant or material control deficiencies to bring to your attention. And we also confirm our independence with respect to conducting the audit in the current year. In our findings report, we've also noted any future accounting standards that will be applicable in 2022 and onwards. And you will note there is an accounting standard in regards to asset retirement obligations that will be effective for 2023, and we'll continue to work with management on adopting that standard within the financial statements. So just like to thank management for all of their time and attention and answering many of our questions in order to bring to you a set of financial statements that are ready for acceptance and a clean opinion.
Thank you. So I'll just ask council, or do you have any questions for either our auditors or for staff? Okay. So then the motion is then that council accept the draft financial statements of the District of Sooke for the year ended December 31st, 2021. Moved by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments to motivate Councillor Logans? No, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just a very quick thank you to Ms. Gray and her staff for doing this amazing work along with our auditors. Thank you very much.
Anything from anyone else? Okay, call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Okay, and everyone leaves, but that's okay. All right, 11.2 is the Sooke Region Chamber of Commerce sponsorship request. We'll note that our member of the public just spoke to this. Thank you for being here tonight. And you see the request here is in front of us. And we also just learned that we have other categories to choose from. The 600 sounds good to me. Okay. Just something. So an option, I'll throw that out there, that council directs staff to fund $600 to the Sooke Region Chamber of Commerce from the sponsorship budget for sponsorship of a trophy award. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any comments on that?
No, great to hear from Ms. Santowski. I love the work that the chamber is doing. Happy to support.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm very, very pleased with the chamber, and they've stepped up this last couple of years, so we can help them along with another $600 for an event. More than happy to do that.
Okay. Other comments, Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, and additionally, I'm always happy to celebrate our successful businesses in Sooke, and so sponsoring an award is a good thing for us to do, I think.
Anything else? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this, of course, and I'm just curious about the category. Now, last year we did not-for-profit and volunteer. The year before we did dining and hospitality. And I would think not-for-profit and volunteer would be the preferred category, maybe.
Perhaps we can make that suggestion through to the chamber. I've seen lots of nods there, but that feels like a good fit.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, just thank you very much for being here and for coming in early. I hope this helps get the planning for the event rolling for the year. Let us know what the date is, and regardless of what happens on October 15th, I'm sure many of us would love to attend anyway. It sounds like you have an exciting event planned. Glad there's always food, because we enjoy food. Our community is known to produce great results, and it just sounds like a nice change, and see how that goes. So well done, and love that you're incorporating the arts and performing arts into it. So it'll be like an all council band or something. Just never know what might show up. Anyway, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to our bylaw section, item in item 12. So 12.1 is our property tax rate bylaw here for adoption. And that is that council adopt the bylaw cited as property tax rate bylaw number 843, 2022. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Sorry about that. It's like it's wrong. I know, it just need to like mix you up or something. Anyway, I note the only criticism we had was something from the grumpy taxpayers about our fire truck decal. And I'm thinking it's so much more than that. Like we're naming trucks. It's recognition of local artwork, particularly recognizing a Sioux artist. And I had spoken with someone else recently who had reached out. I'm just making this as a comment, and they had offered the artist $5,000, and the artist agreed to do the work, but said normally they charge $75,000 for such things. So I think the writer of such needs to do a bit more of his homework before. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for your work on that. Okay, this brings us to 12.2, the fireworks regulation bylaw. And I'll turn this over to our chief, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. So tonight we have a recommendation that Council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the fireworks
Just
bylaw.
Mr. Writer, can you just pause, or sorry, Chief Writer, what is that?
Sorry
May
about that.
just be really loud for the webcast viewers or the recording even. Thank you. Sorry about that, Chief.
No problem. So is that better? Yes. Excellent. So I'll back to the recommendation that Council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the fireworks bylaw to remove general firework permits and only allow permits for community events. Report summary. So as Council is aware, a package was submitted to the District of Sooke on February 18th of this year by a Sooke resident that identified concerns and proof of damage to personal property due to the launching of consumer fireworks. In speaking with our deputy corporate officer, it was brought to my attention that the district had received several other formal complaints as a result of fireworks in 2021. So the intent of this report is to create a dialogue around expressed concerns. Let it be noted that the concerned resident is by no means opposed to fireworks, however, does have concerns about property damage and the real threat of fire. Our department's mandate is to provide community-based, customer-focused service to create a safe and comfortable environment for the residents of Sooke. Allowing consumers to launch fireworks from their own property poses risk and can tie up numerous resources from a fire department response point of view. Extreme weather events are becoming more prominent and only contribute to ever-increasing fire-related risks. To note, our district has taken advantage of grant funding and implemented a Fire Smart program due to our continued threat of wildfire. Money is also being spent on emergency management to ensure our community is prepared for significant events. Fire prevention focuses on the reduction of potential sources of fire, as well as heightening public awareness through education. However, we continue to issue permits for consumer fireworks displays that are causing concern, which does feel counterintuitive. I, like many of you, enjoy fireworks displays and always look forward to events that offer such. However, we do need to consider the message we are sending to the public and how it relates to our bylaws and best practices. I've put some bullet points there. I'm happy to go through them one at a time. I won't spend a lot of time on them, but just things for consideration and to keep in mind. So first one would be, do we consider limiting permits for display fireworks only? If so, where is the best location, keeping safety in mind and taking into consideration viewing spaces? Do we consider regulating consumer displays to only properties of a certain size due to the fallout zones of ash and embers? Do we engage with the public to have such a discussion? Does the district entertain holding events with partners that will provide this enjoyment, such as on Canada Day, Halloween, and possibly New Year's Eve? Do we plan such events around weather patterns? Is there a property that the district can use to launch fireworks that limits the threat to people and or personal property, such as a barge in the basin, for example? Does Sooke Fire Rescue act as the host? Who will obtain proper licensing? Is this something that our fire department has time for, or are we interested in doing such? Some of the key considerations for council is a review and update of the fireworks bylaw should be completed. Climate change is here and we should be working towards the mitigation of risk to our community. striking some form of balance in relation to permits and events could be the best case scenario. Are we taking on unnecessary liability? As I was writing this report, we reached out to some legal experts, if you will, and the Municipal Insurance Association for their input. Some of the comments we received back, liability for the district is quite low. Educating the public is a good option, but the challenge is enforcement. It's difficult for the few that ignore permits. The MIA comments, I think adding something to the permit process that discusses the responsibility of the applicant to carry adequate liability insurance, it would provide a layer of protection. I think the existing indemnity language is worded well in favor of the municipality in relation to these activities. So that sums it up in a nutshell. So I basically wanted to bring this forward because of that package that I think you folks have seen as well. And I think it's important that we have some dialogue on this and try and figure out next steps. So thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chief Ryder. I'm curious, how many permits were actually taken out? Like with the, you know, like, because the fireworks displays could still happen, as noted, either by Young Anderson or the other. So I'm just wondering, in regards to that package, was it actually, did they actually have a permit, or was it just an unsanctioned event on personal property?
I can only speak to what I know since I've been here, but I'm led to believe that there was probably 2 to 3 permits taken out for that particular event. And as you stated, a lot of people, for whatever reason, just decide not to take one out and do what they need to do.
Do you know how many permits are taken out every year on average?
I don't have the exact number, but I don't think it's a lot.
That seems to be my recollection. It's
Yeah.
maybe under 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what that really means is people either don't know there's a requirement for a permit, or they're just not interested in taking one out.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so this incident that happened back, or the letter we received in February, that referred to a display firework scenario versus a consumer firework situation.
Yeah, I believe that's probably just worded improperly. I'm pretty sure it had to do with a consumer fireworks.
Oh, a consumer, okay, so I think our bylaw, if I've got this right, it's one of the great bylaws, by the way, some of the exemptions, prohibited fireworks, you cannot have a ammunition for a miniature tie clip, cufflink, or keychain pistol, nor exploding matches, nor throw down torpedoes. Anyway, one of the prohibitions is no person may discharge consumer fireworks except on October 31st each year between 5 and 10. So is that the only time you can get a permit to discharge a firework in Sooke? Oh, yeah.
I haven't really dove deep into our bylaw, to be frank. I will say, based on previous experience, it's a contentious issue, and due to climate change, and usually the Canada Day is the event that comes up as being sort of contentious, if you will, based on the time of year. Wintertime, not so much of a threat if you do it in a proper space, but if you're doing it in the built-up areas that we have here in Sooke, it can present problems in regards to property damage, such as the example we received from the public. So.
Okay, one more, just diving into these excellent questions for consideration. Thank you. The idea of the district partnering up and holding events, and you're thinking to launch fireworks at a safe space. Do you feel that barge in the harbor, or perhaps at the end of Whiffen Spit would be? Do you have ideas on where else that might be a safe spot in Sooke?
The barge in the harbor was something that had, passed through my mind, I guess, and then I had further conversation with Councillor Lajeunesse about it. And it probably presents the best option moving forward, based on the fact that the embers have a great fallout zone and they're going to land in water. I guess the challenge would be is viewing areas and what parking looks like and those sorts of things. But it makes sense.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Just to confirm, through your worship, my understanding is that we don't have very many permits vis-a-vis the number of fireworks that are going off, probably during Canada Day or during Halloween. Can we confirm that? Just yes?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
We
quite
don't
hear.
have nearly as many permits as we have fireworks going off.
That is correct.
Okay. So, I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question, but is there any reason to believe that changing the bylaw in terms of the permits would actually reduce the activity or reduce the risk?
Not necessarily.
Sorry, I'm just curious as to whether or not in the past, if you know whether or not these kind of changes have actually made a change in the public consciousness or anything, or are we just looking at more people breaking the law?
That's a good question, and I can't really answer that. I mean, you know, we see lots of different things, and at the end of the day, people will do what they want to do, and sometimes that means they'll ignore the bylaw. I think education is the big piece of it, right?
I think there's been changes over the years, because I recall when you could buy them more, there's just more places to buy, including a place in Sooke where you could buy them and just light them off. And then they were going off all the time. And then I think that's where the one bylaw prohibited the sale, and then they're harder to find, but obviously people find them or order them and bring them in because they go off various times of years. In terms of the summer, I do recall we've canceled Canada Day fireworks. I don't remember what year it was. It was just simply too dry and unsafe, and it was understandable. And other years in the summer, our fire and rescue volunteers have been deployed to deal with wildfire. And that may likely be the norm for Canada Day going forward. So then the fireworks were used at Halloween one year, and then they were lit off here from John Phillips Memorial. Was that 2015? I don't remember exactly what year it was, but it was to have an event here. I think I didn't go because I was handing out candy at my house. So it varies, like Halloween is busy depending on where you live in Sooke. And then planning around weather events, that's easy and hard to do because you would think that it would be more spring-like out there right now, and it isn't. It's like snowing in Calgary today. So I think you can make best efforts. But even for Canada Day, I believe that the Lions were not successful in, like there was a challenge even getting them this year for some reason.
Yeah, I consulted with the fire chief, and they weren't available anyways because of a black powder shortage. And plus, talking with the chief, I wasn't sure it was a good idea anymore. Down where they were with some of the past instances, but we'll have to deal with that next year. It's not happening this year anyways. Are we at the comment stage?
I was sort of looking at some of the comments here that the chief had put in, because part also of that location is some of the embers did some damage to the all-weather field because they were launched on like the Sioux side of the river. But I think that caused some challenges just with the way the campground is restructured. And then so it went across the river, but then the embers did some damage to the turf field. So that's where, then that's like another fundraising initiative to repair the field, right? So that, and then I heard that a tree caught on fire and a bear came running out. So it's good fun for the fire crew. Councillor Lukens.
I'd like to move the recommendation that staff direct council to bring forward an amendment to bylaw number 286 fireworks regulation bylaw 2007 to remove general firework permits and only allow permits for community events.
Is there a second for that amendment? Seconder.
I'll put it, I'll second it so we discuss it.
Second for discussion.
Because I have some problems.
Okay, Councillor Beddoes, it's seconded. Go ahead.
No,
Councillor.
I completely agree. I don't know really why. I mean, I know why this is here, but I also don't know why this is here. And I think everyone can kind of agree with that. I moved this because it would be great to have permits for community events. I think that's something that we can all agree on. In terms of permits for the public, we don't have many. So we're gonna get fireworks with or without it. And people still aren't doing it. I think really the public education piece is probably one of the most important pieces of this whole issue. Really, this amendment just makes it our bylaw a bit more clear, and I mean, those who are going to do fireworks are going to do them regardless. But it's our job to go out there and educate them as to the dangers of doing such.
Counselor St. Pierre. Actually, sorry, I'll go to Counselor Beddoes as the mover because he's seconded, not as the mover, but as seconder, and then I'll come to you, okay?
Yeah, the part that I object to is the restrictedness of only community events. There are organizations, and sometimes they're even religious organizations, that might have a need for fireworks. And if they have a large property and it's safe, I don't see why we would restrict them. I think there has to be an avenue open for them. Now, I don't see that being very onerous for our fire department. I know it involves a bit of time, but if they do get an application and somebody wants to do it right, then I think that you have a look and say, well, you've got a 5-acre field, you're doing this, it's wet grass. Yes, you have our blessing and give them the permit, providing they have the proper insurance. I'd rather do that than chase the person, just say, well, I'm going to do it anyways. Because by law, we don't have enough bylaw people to enforce it. So I'd like to have a legal avenue for somebody other than a community event to have this ability. And I doubt whether we'd get more than one every 5 years. But I'd like to see it in there. So I don't have a problem with staff going back and coming back with some recommendation, but this only allowing permits for community events, I think is too restrictive. That's the part that I object to. So I don't mind them going back and work on it. They're all very good suggestions, and but I think if we close all the doors, they're just going to let them off anyways. And I'd rather have, if I have a family gathering and I have a safe place to do it and I have a reason to do it, I don't think I should be restricted. And I think I would consult with the fire department, and they're very good at it, and they'd tell me if it's safe. So, thanks.
Counselor St. Pierre.
To my understanding, there's two reasons that this has come before us, really. One is being property damage due to fireworks being lit off, and the other one is simply that times are changing. We're looking at greater wildfire risks and so on and so forth. We want to mitigate that. It doesn't seem, just on first look, that actually making this particular change to the bylaw is actually going to do anything for either of those items. We're not really preventing property damage because the fireworks are still going to go off. We've already admitted that. And in terms of the climate, it seems to me that maybe we should be restricting fireworks further, for example, in the dry season, Canada Day and such, but maybe continuing to allow it in Halloween. But I think that whatever we do needs to actually address the problems, as opposed to just a blanket, let's not have any permits, because as Councilor Beddoes has pointed out, that's also going to disallow avenues for people to do it legally in safe circumstances when it's, the other thing is that honestly, people need to be able to celebrate. These are pretty depressing times and fireworks are fun. I think not allowing people to celebrate and have fun is probably not in our best interest in general. I do think that we need to be very careful about the wildfire risk, but I think that that's something that we need to address specifically. And I think, again, it comes right back to education, but it's not, I think this particular bylaw, if changed in this particular way, is too much of a blunt tool, and it won't actually get us where we want to go.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I agree. I think if people have properties that are large enough to accommodate fireworks, if they're having a special, or not a special event, but a gathering, and they want to have fireworks, and if we can allow them to get a permit, I think that's good. I think if we were to instate an outright ban when there's a burning ban on, when you can't even have a campfire, that would be wise. Because last summer there were people setting off fireworks in the hottest part of the summer, and it's hard to tell where they're coming from. But again, we don't have enough bylaw officers to be chasing people around on Halloween to take away their fireworks. And so during the winter months, Halloween, New Year's, people tend to put on some pretty awesome fireworks display. I get about 4 of them that I can see from my house. And I don't think they have permits, so it's gonna be really hard to stop them. So, yeah, I think allowing people to get permits and seeing that they're doing it properly and providing education so that we don't have a fire risk due to fireworks is a good thing, but that's a complicated issue.
Yep, I'll just go to Councillor Bateman first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll agree with all these comments. Education would be the key to educate people to our fireworks regulation bylaw 2007, which does explicitly state, as I said earlier, no discharge of consumer fireworks except on October 31st between 5 and 10 p.m. And these consumer fireworks are the kind that family groups can set off. They're, as explicitly stated in the bylaw, these are fireworks showers, fountains, lawn lights, pinwheels, Roman candles, and volcanoes, which sound pretty wild. And you can order these things. Far Out Fireworks in Coombs, BC is a retail outlet for fireworks, and they've got a wonderful online, so you can ship them in all over the place. So the big issue then is, as stated, is people letting them off outside of this this window between 5 and 10 p.m. on Halloween. And of course, with education, they'd know they'd need a permit, that the permit costs, what is it, $10 for consumer fireworks permit. And that I believe they get the short training course on how to light off fireworks safely. So that education is important. I had something else to say, but I'll just quote Jack Knox here. He was just noting how fireworks, these regulations are common across the CRD and across Canada. Small children, darkness, fire, alcohol, and explosive devices. What could possibly go wrong? Says, anyway, there you go.
Councillor Beddoes?
Very, very entertaining, Councillor Bateman, I must say. No, I was just saying, like, the incident that brought this to a head, of course, was in a very heavy residential area. And probably in hindsight, I don't know whether they had a permit or not, but that's a classic case where a permit shouldn't be granted if there's not a safe place to let them off. If it can drift over into your neighbor's property and burn their siding, then that's not the spot to do it. So, but rather than close the door, let's deal with the problem at hand. So, yeah, I don't know how we proceed with this, but some direction.
Councillor St. Pierre?
In lines with what I was saying earlier, increased fire risk and damage to property. I like what the MIA had to say about liability, putting a liability, getting liability insurance in order to get a permit. So Councilor Beto was talking about, someone that's got a property, or maybe they don't have a big enough property, but they better make it safe and they're going to have insurance to do it within the bylaw. I think that would actually address, at least to some degree, a legal avenue. People still do it without, and that doesn't, there's nothing we can do about that. But the liability insurance could actually help out with that piece. Some disagree, though, I can tell. Whew.
Well, it's a matter of whether or not you could get it, but just to comment here, I appreciate the work the chief is doing, because we are trying to become more fire smart, more aware. There are risks out there. Last year in the heat dome, when I was tenting outside, we watched a sky lantern go by, and I was like, wow, of all the times to let one of those go in the air. Okay. And just sort of watched it till I couldn't see it anymore. The one benefit of having a permit process is it does sort of share, here's what the best practices are. If you're going to do this, this is what you need to do. And then after the fact, I can see it being very difficult to pinpoint where the fireworks are from, because unless you're there, you can trace it too. Like if there's 5 that go off and then someone complains, unless you know specifically where they came from, it's going to be really hard to do that. I think it's fair to say that they will continue to come off. Even if we don't have a permit process, you can buy them, as Councillor Bateman says, and you can let them off or fire them off, or whatever the proper terminology is. having the permit process would show, okay, this is what we like to see when you do this. This is what keeps your property safe, your friends and your family safe, the viewing people with you, as well as your neighbors. And these are the things you need to consider. It's the same as having a campfire. You should have water and sand close by, and you need to do all these things to have a safe campfire. And we have all of that. Does everyone do that when they light a campfire? Probably not, but these are the safe and best practices to keep it safe. So having that option available, I think it's just, that sort of keeps the educational piece. I think in the event that our fire, if we do want to do events like this, I think always relying on our fire and rescue crew to do it isn't fair. They have family and friends. They may want to enjoy Halloween and Canada Day and do other things with their time than to light off these displays that go into the night and sit around and cleaning them up afterwards. So that's the community event part. I only hear them, I've only really hear them on New Year's Eve, July 1st sometimes, July 4th sometimes, Halloween sometimes. And really that's about it, depending on the year. Whereas when I've spent time over in Surrey, like we've heard them around Holy more frequently than on Halloween, according to my in-laws, because that would be a more prominent ceremony or festivity that residents in that particular city probably like to enjoy. So I get that it's difficult. I just think by shutting the door, you can't do them at all. They're still going to go off, and then there's no safe and best practice to look at whatsoever.
Your worship, can
And
I
it makes it even
propose a
worse, right?
friendly amendment?
So, yeah, when I'm done talking. Go ahead. Clearly doesn't want to hear me anymore. What was that be?
No, I was just trying, because I can't support this in its present form. So I was just going to say if just said that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the fireworks bylaw. And hearing what we said today and some of these things, go back and work with that. Would that be reasonable?
What is the amendment though?
Well, not to chop off the last part of the recommendation, because we've already moved this recommendation second. Is that correct?
It's not friendly, but I'll withdraw the motion.
We should just defeat it, because I think my only issue with that, Councillor Beddoes, is it's just, it doesn't really do anything.
Okay. I just said I'm okay with that.
Ms.
I would
Machado?
like something done, but I can't support it.
Fair enough. Ms. Machado?
If I may, through your worship, I've crafted an amendment, if somebody would like to move the amendment, which is to strike the word remove and strike the phrase only allow permits, and to add define conditions for. So the motion would read that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to bylaw number 286, fireworks regulation bylaw 2007, to define conditions for general firework permits and community events.
Does that work for the mover?
I mean, anything works for me. I was just trying to get the conversation going so we could get this
Well,
going.
It would be in a separate amendment.
Okay,
So
yeah.
if somebody wanted
so
to move the amendment.
I think it's just going to be easier for us to defeat it, because then we can see it. Like, I just think it's cleaner sometimes just to track it. So I'm going to call the question on this, please, and then we can put forward a new motion. Then it's just cleaner than amending amendments and la la la. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? So that's unanimously defeated. So I thought procedurally the mover couldn't vote against their own motion.
Well, I tried to withdraw, but you wouldn't let me.
All right, fine. You could challenge the chair. So just for clarity on point of order. So if a member of council calls a point of order, the chair would listen to it. You stop proceedings, you listen to it. And then if the chair doesn't agree, but the mover still insists that their motion is correct, then you challenge the chair and there's a vote. So there's no back and forth. The chair makes a ruling, it stands. If you disagree, then you challenge the chair and we vote. That is the process.
Can I get a clarification?
That one's defeated on a new motion or on point of orders?
I just wanted clarification about the mover having to vote for the motion.
I thought that was in the procedural bylaw that the mover votes
Because
in
I
favor of
work
their
on
motion.
a Robert's Rule of Order. You can make the motion to bring it on the floor and second it for discussion, and you
Usually,
still vote against it. So I just want a clarification. I'm not sure. if
we'll
that's-
get that after from our procedural bylaw, but that's someone, I think on our staff told me that once because I voted against something. Is that true?
I'm sorry, I was.
Working on the motion, we'll follow up on that. How about that? No, we'll get clarity on that. Okay, so this one then is that council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to bylaw number 286, fireworks regulation bylaw 2007, to define conditions for general firework and community community event permits. Is that right? Community event permits. Okay. Moved by Counselor Beddoes, seconded by Counselor Bateman. Comments, Counselor Beddoes? No?
No, I think we said enough. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Bateman.
Yeah, I think that aligns with the chief's recommendation of review and update of the fireworks bylaw. Should be at least looked at. So the other piece I wouldn't mind seeing here is that the district make it a communications priority as we approach Halloween to educate the public about the bylaw. I don't know if that can be added.
Well, it may even be something because we hear them around Canada Day and the 4th of July. And as we get into extreme weather conditions, then I think it's just including pieces around fireworks and sky lanterns and the risks associated with those as we hit dry weather, like it's all of us. So I think it would make sense. And then when that wanes, to do it again as we approach Halloween. And then I think for those that have concerns about it, it's, you know, these aren't, often it seems they're not certainly in events past, they're not permitted. I remember one time there was all these complaints, but not a single permit had been taken out. So the criticism was that we allow for permits, but when no one has even applied for one, even without it, they're still going to go off. So that's where we're at. Councillor St. Pierre.
I quite like Councilor Deschanet's suggestion of linking the fire bans to education on fireworks. So basically trying to make that stronger connection between fire and fireworks somehow. If we can make that link in the education, when we put that out there, when there's a fire ban, it includes everything with the word fire in it, would be really good. And obviously that's not part of the bylaw per se, but I'll just throw that out.
Well, and things that burn that go in the sky.
And your
Mr.
worship, I
Schaffer.
think that's clearly something that we should look at when we do the review of the fire department or the fire bylaw or fireworks bylaw rather. So it will do that.
Very good, thank you. Okay, any other comments? See none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much, Chief, for bringing this forward and for your work on this. See you again. Oh, we have a follow-up question?
Well, no, I did want to say a few things just to get you to sort of maybe ponder as we close this out and take a different path. One of them is that when there's a provincial fire ban, fireworks is part of that ban. So that's usually somewhat well known in my world. The other thing is that I think we really need to look at the difference between consumer fireworks and display fireworks. Consumer fireworks, basically for the layman, allows anybody to go buy fireworks and blast them off. The challenge we have, as I said earlier, is the lot sizes we have here, if you think about the subdivisions. So that's a significant concern because I don't think they talk about fallout zones for consumer for consumer fireworks. So nobody really knows the distance the embers are going and where they're going to fall. So in my previous role, I did a lot of work with pyrotechnic experts who had licenses, who understood fallout zones, and we designed shows based on the size of properties we had. So those things are important. My staff, at least as far as I'm aware, nobody has those skills. I do believe the previous chief a few chiefs ago had those skills to do that, and I think he still has a license. So there's somebody that has that knowledge and in-depth experience in regards to launching fireworks. You know, this is nothing new. This is something that we deal with on a yearly basis, but the trend now is most municipalities and local governments are moving towards banning because of the threat. So all I want to do is just make sure you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm just saying we really need to look at this. Ms. Mouchard and I have looked at some other bylaws out there that we're going to probably refer to and maybe emulate a little bit to come up with a best case scenario for us. So, you know, it's going to take some time and a lot of work, but I think we'll craft something that will be amenable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, moving on, and tonight's agenda is 12.3, council remuneration bylaw number 845. So we had this discussion at our previous meeting and the motion here tonight. I'll just see first if there's any questions before we move through the readings. Okay, so the motion is, or the recommendation is that council give first, second, and third reading to council remuneration and benefits bylaw number 845. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions, comments? Nope. Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Next up is item 12.4, zoning amendment bylaw number 8445686 Woodlands Road. Okay, I'm seeing some hands. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I'm gonna recuse myself from this one. My brother owns the adjacent property.
Okay. We'll see you. You're heading for the kitchen. Councillor Bateman.
And I'm going to join Councillor Lajeunesse as I'm a friend of Don's, the applicants. So I
Okay.
will step out.
You can go into the kitchen too. We still have quorum, so we can still deliberate on the matter. Let's wait for Councillor Bateman to leave. Okay, so I'll turn this over to staff, please.
Thanks for your patience. The District of Sooke has received a zoning bylaw amendment application for rezoning a property located at 5686 Woodlands Road from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5. That's for the purposes of facilitating a 3-lot subdivision. Subject property is 1.53 hectares located in North Casinos neighborhood of Sooke on Woodlands Road between Mouch Drive and Harborview Road. The surrounding neighborhood is a mix of rural.
Sorry,
residential-
Mr. Paolo, I just need you to stop for a second. You're talking too loud. I can't hear both.
They're out in the other area.
Over here, Mark. Because it's the echo. Sorry, it's too loud. Sorry, Mr. Paolo, go ahead.
No, not a problem. The surrounding neighborhood is a mix of rural, residential, and agricultural uses. Generally, the surrounding neighborhood is treed with clearings for house sites and small agricultural operations. Subject property is designated gateway residential in the official community plan. This is the area in which low-density residential growth will occur. Although this area is categorized as a growth area and is located within an identified community growth area, the type of development that is targeted for this is low-density infill. The proposed zoning amendment meets the objectives of the gateway residential land use designation. The new lots proposed will provide low-density infill while preserving the rural character of the surrounding neighborhood. OCP considers allowing developers the flexibility to provide their required affordable housing in different forms, creating an affordable housing mix in new developments. This could be secondary suites, condominium rental units, cash, or land in lieu. District of Sooke towards an on-off site affordable housing. Cash in lieu amount is not formally defined in our current policies. However, properties rezoning to neighborhood rural residential RU5 have applicants volunteering to pay $3,000 per new lot created. Cash contribution for affordable housing is to be secured by a Section 219 covenant. The applicant has acknowledged the importance of affordable housing and has volunteered to contribute $6,000 for the proposed additional 2 new lots created and to be contributed to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. Staff support cash in lieu as proposed by the applicant. Staff recommends that council consider accepting cash in lieu of parkland dedication, which will be determined at the time of subdivision. As per section 512 of the Local Government Act, the minimum frontage along a highway must be 10% of the perimeter of the lot being created, and in accordance with the minimum frontage that the local government may, by bylaw, provide. All the proposed new lots do not appear to meet this requirement. At the time of subdivision, the applicant will be required to submit a detailed rationale and a breakdown of each proposed lot showing the perimeter and 10% calculation to the approving officer for review and consideration before approval can be granted. The applicant's requesting to amend the current zoning from RU4 to RU5. The key differences between the two zones are outlined in the table shown on the screen here. Mainly the RU4 minimum lot size is 1 hectare compared to the RU5 zone, which has the 2,500 square meter minimum lot size. These are the necessary zones required as they are located outside the sewer specified area. So the requirement is necessary for private on-site servicing. The analysis that was provided determined suitable soil conditions for an on-site sewage system. Island Health has stated that they have no objections to the rezoning amendment application if they are referred to during the subdivision stage of development to ensure that the proposed lots follow Island Health subdivision standards. Zoning amendment application meets the requirements of the district's official community plan policies. Ideally, the applicant would like to create 2 additional new lots. However, the conceptual subdivision layout will require a variance or some form of redesign in order to proceed. So what that means is the minimum lot size to accommodate rezoning to create an additional lot can be provided for under the RU5 designation. However, there's a number of other subdivision development requirements that need to be met, and at that time will need to be considered with the applicant's rationale as part of a variance application. However, for land use purposes, 1 additional new lot can be created, and therefore is why staff is supporting first and second reading of this application from RU4 to RU5, and to also proceed with scheduling of a public hearing. That concludes my presentation, and I believe the applicants are in attendance if there's questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Any questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. Go ahead.
This question, through your worship, to the applicant perhaps. I was just curious as to whether or not the units are meant for family, which quite frankly, these days I consider to be a form of affordable housing. So I'm just curious on that account.
Mr. Brown, would you be able to come forward, please? And if you could please just turn on the microphone and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I got it on? Yes. Thank you. Identifying myself, I'm Don Brown. I'm one of the applicants for this proposal. And in answer to your question, I'd like to actually include my answer in a prepared statement that I have for council that I'd like to take a few minutes to read. It's just,
Yep.
I'd rather read the statement rather than talk off my head, because then I can keep myself on track and hopefully be brief. First of all, I'd like to thank the planning department for moving this application forward and for the council considering at this time. It's been 15 months since our first pre-application meeting with the staff of Sooke, and during that time, most of that time has been spent addressing and justifying the variances necessary to allow us to move to those 3 lots by widening our existing driveway while preserving the corridor of trees that border the driveway to access the 3 lots. And although it's gratifying to see this submission for rezoning to proceed, we had thought that this would occur along with the request for the variances. So as without the variance approvals, then we can't proceed with the project. We understand that the variance requests are currently being reviewed by the staff again, and we have not been told when this will be completed. From the initial review we had that was completed in January, there appeared to be a way forward, but it's still uncertain if the district staff will support the development. Now that the rezoning and the variance requests have been separated, it is unclear as to how to proceed and how to ensure the rezoning application and the variances are consistent. For example, the submission before you includes a requirement to pay $6,000 to support the affordable housing. We have been told that by adding 2 additional lots, we will need to provide $9,000. The question is this correct? And that we should pay $9,000, or does the approval of this subdivision essentially pre-propose that we can only have one additional lot? And secondly, the submission does not, as is pointed out, does not include the amount of cash in lieu of the parkland dedication, and we've not been informed of what it is or how it's going to be determined, which is obviously important for us in determining how much money we're going to be spending going down the road. The entire 15-month process has been incredibly frustrating and stressful for our family. We have particularly for me, because detachment and patience aren't really one of my strengths. We're not developers, we're a family. What we're trying to do here is absolutely optimize the use of our one single asset, which is our home. And what we're hoping to do is sell the current principal property. And on one of the lots is to build an affordable retirement home for me and my wife to live in the rest of our lives. So that's one home. The second property will be for our daughter. And that's to provide her a place of refuge to come home to when the conditions get worse in Bolivia, where she's living now. And so that will be a second home. So they'll both be single home dwellings. The frustration we have had over these last number of months has been made worse by the anxiety about the future. Basically, all our plans are on hold. We've not made any plans for our new home. We've not done any plans for developing the property because we're waiting for these approvals. And although we're certain that the proposed development is feasible and it's reasonable, it still is at variance from the rules. And the staff can still simply say no, and we feel powerless to do anything about it. We've spent over $17,000 to date on this project. And if we're allowed only one additional lot, we will be unable to meet our needs, and all our time, effort, and funds will be wasted. What we're asking going forward is to ensure the rezoning of the property does not negate the approval of the variances. Secondly, that the project move forward as expeditiously as possible, and whatever approvals are required for the rezoning for the variances are not delayed waiting for the approval of the rezoning. And finally, that the reasonableness and the family objectives of this project be taken into consideration in determining the approval of the variances. Regarding the public consultation, we have statements by the 3 neighbors who are directly adjacent to the lots being developed, that they all have no objections to the project, and that all the other neighbors will only be affected by the limited natural re-increase of traffic along Woodlands Road, including scooters driven by the elderly couple that are going to be living there. In conclusion, I think the project benefits everyone involved. It enables us to live affordably and independently in our own home, minimizing the burden we may place on community resources for the elderly. It preserves the rural character of the area by maintaining the tree corridor along the panhandle, eliminating the requirement to cut down over 400 square meters of forested land to build a road diagonally along Casinos Creek along the back of our property to provide access to one of the lots. And finally, it preserves the mature cedar trees at the front of the panhandle from being cut down to build a 5-meter long sidewalk. And hopefully, it will also minimize the valuable time the council has to spend to address this project more than necessary. Thank you for listening to me. I hope it took less than 5 minutes. I planned it to do that.
That's fine, Mr. Brown.
Oh, thank you. I usually talk much longer. It's fine. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions?
Yes. That does answer the question. I have no more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, so I have a question through to our staff. Could you just turn on your mic, turn it on? Thank you. It's just to reduce the feedback. So in terms of the variances, when, like, are those items that will come to council, or where are we at with that?
So originally, when the application was made, the applicant, in communicating what their intent was with the rezoning, was to create 2 additional lots. So in total, there would be 3 lots on this parcel. Staff, through the zoning bylaw review, had identified compliance issues that would require variances for that subdivision application to proceed. That variance process is going through the internal review process with staff to determine how those variances could be supported and to communicate the rationale on why that support could be provided. If not, explaining to the applicant why those variances cannot be supported by staff, and ultimately those would come forward to council for consideration. Now, those variances aren't specific just to the zoning bylaw, they're also to the subdivision and development standards bylaw as well. So there's a number of variances that have been requested that require multiple departments' input on the implications. So that is why, in moving forward, given the length of time and understanding that the applicant's request is to have those 3 lots, but also knowing that we have an official community plan review process ongoing, and that there could be a number of different policy challenges that could come forward. At this time, we could support at least rezoning of this property so that the matters of a variance and subdivision application could be dealt with afterwards. The zoning piece, the land use change could be dealt with now while staff work on the variances with the applicant. So that is the reason for the separation of those items. Otherwise, this rezoning would not come forward until a future date when we could resolve those variance issues and at least present the full package to council. But that would leave an unknown as to what time in future, if the new OCP were to be adopted, and what policy implications that could have on this property.
But, okay, so let me just think about this for a moment here. I'm going to think and talk at the same time, so bear with me, Mr. Powell. So you're sharing that you're referring to some policies in the draft OCP that may impact this property. But at the same time, we haven't adopted that OCP. So, you know, and then I hear from the applicant now what their objectives are. However, if we rezone this and they're unsuccessful achieving that 3rd lot, then they may want to unwind it back to that it may not be in their best interest to progress the rezoning. And the end goal is they would like 3 lots to benefit what their family needs. If they're not successful with the variances though, and they're stuck with 2, then it fails to meet their objective. So in some cases, would it not be better to wait to understand those variances before progressing this? Because otherwise they're stuck. It's still not going to meet their needs there. And then what? Like that's a big risk for a family to take on.
Well, it's my understanding that the risk has begun through initiating the application process, and that's what the initial communications back when this was a pre-application discussion, and then that progressed into a zoning and variance application process. And staff had highlighted to the applicant concerns with waiting longer and potentially losing out entirely on the rezoning process. And so we had discussed the separation of those 2 items to at least recognize if zoning was to be achieved, that we could then continue on with the variance process, regardless of what happens in the OCP moving forward. If we wait further, that adds another element of risk to this application should the new OCP and this zoning application come forward at a time where the zoning potentially could not be supported. And we did not want to have the applicant in that situation, knowing that the variances could be dealt with separately, because at this time, the property could be rezoned and subdivided.
See, that flares up something about the draft OCP though, because if it's a draft, then why is it influencing this application? If it's already in stream, if it's not adopted yet, then why are we even looking at it? It should be what the current OCP and the current set of policies are. But the second piece, if the draft OCP is going to have those sorts of financial implications on families that are just trying to survive, then it makes me concerned about more. I think we're sticking those policies to the wrong people. If it's a large developer, yes, but if it's small, it's families that are just trying to live and survive, then that draft is adding in that's an unintended consequence. Like we're punishing the middle class. Like it's the wrong group of people.
And I think that's why that conversation is ongoing following the open house, is that matters such as these and others will be discussed further in progressing that official community plan to the next stage.
Mr. Brown?
Could I just say that the reasons that were given to me was that in the new OCP, Cecinos North has now been determined as rural, and there's not going to be any further development of along Woodlands Road. And that's what's going to happen with the new OCP. And the reason now, what we are doing is we're, of course, started this whole process. We were encouraged by this at the beginning of this process because it was gateway residential. They were looking at infill of existing properties to do minimum development and keeping with the rural character, which we thought, and we assured them that we were following all of those requirements. So it really does raise a question. There would be other proposals that are in the mill right now that are you going to evaluate them based on where they started their application? Or are you going to then, as the rules change, because we have found as we've moved along, there's different requirements have been changing on us at different times. And we've been sort of dancing around like that. And this is another one, is that if we wait till all the variances are available, are resolved, and we thought we had resolved them as of January, because we're into the second or third review by staff in terms of this variances. Are we going to, if it changes and you have a new OCP and you have a whole lot of proposals that are in the pipeline, are you going to say, oh, now the rules have changed, you have to now meet the new OCP requirements? And that seems to me to be, not an appropriate approach to take. It should be, you should base your approvals based on what the rules were at the time when you made the application.
Mr. Patel, and then I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, I would say that based on that, staff is working with the applicant to mitigate that risk, knowing that had we held off further, like any application that is going through a review process at the same time that bylaws are being reviewed and potentially updated, they can go in either direction, either in favor of an applicant or against an applicant. So we're looking to mitigate that risk by bringing forward this rezoning application ahead of time, so that the only matters that are still outstanding are the matters that were addressed initially over a year ago with the applicant when we identified zoning bylaw and subdivision and development standard concerns. The purpose of bringing forward the rezoning is to identify, is the land use on the property supportable from an OCP perspective to go from RU4 to RU5? Based on our analysis and that the property has sufficient area, an additional subdivision can be created. A third lot can also be created. However, there is other technical matters with the subdivision development standards bylaw and the zoning bylaw that need to be addressed. And through staff's technical review of that, we can bring forward a recommendation to council based on those variances. However, based on information that we received from the applicant recently over the last couple of weeks, there were some additional considerations in their site plan layout of what they wanted to keep or remove on their site plan. Those are all subdivision matters that come forward, but knowing that the subdivision application cannot move forward until the variances have been addressed, that is the reason why the variances can't come forward. But strictly for land use and rezoning, staff can support at least a change from RU4 to RU5. And we've understood that the applicant wants 3 lots, and we've communicated that that can only be possible if staff can support the variances.
But the variances will come to council.
That is correct.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre, then Beddoes.
I think that if I understand correctly, what we're looking at here is basically moving the zoning from RU4 to RU5 and doing it immediately, because depending on when the OCP goes into effect, and depending on how long this process takes, instead of actually doing it now, we could be looking at having to make our first OCP amendment on a new OCP in order to potentially allow this, which would be far more onerous than actually going through the process that seems to be recommended. And I do think that we've got obviously a process that's putting, it seems, undue stress on applicants in terms of actually getting the job done. And I think that's certainly something that we can examine and look at. But at this point in time, what we have in front of us is strictly this rezoning application, which I think is taking into account the best interests of the applicant and of the process that we do have in front of us. The other thing I would point out is that although it might seem to make sense to, say I started my application at this point in time, and let's use the rules from this point in time onwards. And my God, in some ways, it just so seems to make so much sense. Unfortunately, many applications will nonetheless take a long period of time, and the rules do change and the ground does change. And what about a development that takes 5 years? Trying to ask staff to keep track of multiple sets of rules and when each one of them came into effect is just entirely unwieldy. And so even though it's not wonderful, we have to actually find a workable system, and this is what we've got. I just want to provide that little bit of explanation because I would love it if that could be the case, but we just can't seem to get that kind of certainty and still have something that works. I would suggest at this point in time, I would like to move the motion.
Just we have a question and then I'll come to you, Councillor St. Pierre. Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is to the applicant. Do you wish to proceed under the circumstances that are laid out here? I mean, I got a lot of comments on it too, but I guess it comes back to you.
Well, I guess in one sense,
Sorry, Mr. Brown, can you just turn on the microphone? Sorry.
I guess in one sense, certainly we are very happy that this is going forward like this. Our concern is, one of my concerns, this is one of them, is that the provision here for $6,000 mentioned in the application, we were told if we to have 3 lots, the amount would be $9,000. This says $6,000. And by saying this, does it presuppose we're only going to get one additional lot? And when you pass this, essentially what you've done is killed the project. That's our concern.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm just trying to wade through this. I'm not happy with this process at all. But I also understand your predicament and I want it to proceed that give you some sort of assurances. And the 6,000, 9,000, if you got 3 lots, it's 9,000, 2 lots, it's 6,000. So you think if it's mentioned 6,000, it's going to lock you in.
That's right.
I'm hoping that's not the case.
Wow.
So I really need to hear loud and clear if you wish us to proceed under this, then I'm willing to personally move it forward. Understanding that the present OCP is one thing, and we have a concern that deals with your neighborhood there that we will be dealing with the new OCP that has come up at our recent open house. And we will be looking into that because there are some concerns about that. But my main concern right now is you and your applicant, because I really sense your frustration and it absolutely drives me crazy. And I don't know the particulars of it all. And staff has been very good at doing a lot of things. But again, it's sort of, I don't want to call you Joe Blow, but just a general purpose people trying to do stuff in this community should expect something quicker than that. And being respectful to staff, I understand it's a complicated issue. I don't mean to throw you under the bus there. I just want to, yes, we proceed with this, I'll vote for it. And if you need a clarification on the 6,000 to 9,000, I think our staff will give you that. But that's the question I have for you.
Councillor St. Pierre, and then I'll let Mr. Brown give an answer and then back to Mr. Patel.
Through your worship, I'd like to let Mr. Patel answer the question around the 6,000, 9,000.
Thank you. So the draft section 219 covenant that's attached to this report indicates that $3,000 per new lot would be required. So we put that in there specifically because that covenant is registered against the title. If the subdivision does not occur in a timely fashion, sometimes these things happen 5 years down the road as opposed to the next year. At least that covenant registers and recognizes that it's a per lot basis. So if the potential is available that they could get an additional lot, then you just factor in, okay, paying another $3,000 per lot. Or if they can't get those additional lots, they know exactly it's $3,000 per new lot being created, not that they have to provide 6 or 9 or whatever number. It's $3,000 per new lot being created.
Well, to clarify then, because I still don't quite get it. Why, if the point is that for whatever new lots are required, why doesn't the statement say that? Why doesn't the application, the submission say that for any new lots, it will be $3,000 per new lot, as opposed to fixing the number at $6,000, which precludes that there's only going to be 2 lots? That seems to be a reasonable request. Certainly, we would like to move ahead with it, but if it precludes us moving ahead with the 3 lots, then everything we've done is wasted.
Councillor Logans.
I completely see where you're coming from. I think the wording of that last paragraph of the motion is quite confusing. And if we could reword that prior to going ahead so that it does say perhaps 3,000 per new lot created, if that makes sense.
Well, we can, I was going to sever them all, like do them all individually.
Yeah, just something for us to consider before we get to that one.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with them. Yeah, I appreciate where you're at, Mr. Brown. And just the process that our staff is in as well. At the same time, I am also aware that there's a significant housing crisis. And I can see why you're wanting to create a space for your daughter to return home. Because if you don't do that, there may not be an option for her to live close by, just given this, just given real estate in Sooke and elsewhere. It's not just here, but everywhere. And just the pressure there. I also feel that you are always going to be better at home as you age. And regardless of how old you get, you're always going to be better at home. And so because you're doing this now and just making plans for a safe future for yourself, for your daughter to live next door, and hopefully somebody friendly in your new home, and just working within the neighborhood. I mean, you'll thrive and do well there. And that's why I'm stuck on the contribution to the 6,000 on that. In terms of, and whether or not this is appropriate to ask. So we'll get to that in a separate one, which is why I want to separate these. I do have a question though about the cash in lieu for the 5%. So I understand some of this is, mandated by local government acts. So there is the 5% parkland dedication. So what dollar amount is that?
So that's an amount. So when it comes to parkland dedication, we can request that the applicant provide an appraisal that indicates what the amount is. But those are on when you're creating 3 or more additional lots. So in this instance, it may not be required. That's something that's factored in at the subdivision stage.
So 3 or more additional or 3 total?
Additional.
So in this case, it wouldn't apply then. Oh, I see, because let me think and talk for a second. So this RU5 zone could allow for 4 lots, 5 lots?
So 2,500 square meters is the minimum lot size. I believe this lot size is
The total lot size.
1.53 hectares. So 10,000. 530 square meters. So based on minimum lot size and total lot area, you could accommodate more than 3 additional lots. It's the overall configuration of the lot and access and all the other matters that staff are looking into right now because of technical challenges with creating those new lots. That's the purpose of the variances.
Okay, but this is where, because the parkland dedication is 3 new lots, in this case, if Mr. Brown stuck with 3 lots total, then the parkland dedication would not apply.
That is correct.
But let's say they reworked something and felt like, oh, 4 lots would fit. then because it's 3 new lots, then the parkland dedication would apply.
You're correct.
Got it. Okay, so that's why it may not apply in your case, Mr. Brown, should it remain 3 lots total. Correct?
Well, does that, or do you still have to pay something? The point is, the point about it possibly being able to be subdivided into 4 lots in terms of the real property. A third of that property is covenanted land, it's Casinos Creek.
Right.
And the land cannot be developed any more than 3 lots. We've maximized and optimized the size of the lots so that if we meet the more than meet the requirements of 2,500, they're 2,800 and 2,700 and over 4,000 or 4,600. So, but that's the physical configuration of the lot doesn't allow for anything more than a total of 3 lots, 2 new lots in the existing lot.
Right, so that's why in this case, that particular line wouldn't apply in your case, should you be successful with the 3 lots, because it's 3 lots total and not 3 new lots. I see some hands. Ms. Machada, then I'll go to Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out that this is the application being considered for first, second reading and being to be called to a public hearing. For the public hearing, our legal requirement for the notice is to specifically state what the application is for and what the density will be, which would be the 2 additional lots, which sums up to the $6,000 contribution. Council cannot at the public hearing change the density on the lot without going back and re-advertising the public hearing. So what is in front of you tonight for 2 additional lots, a total of 3, is what the application will be heard at public hearing, which would result, if approved, in the $6,000 contribution.
I know, but you're talking about the affordable housing contribution. I'm referring to the parkland piece, in which case there wouldn't be any. That's the piece I'm trying to clarify here. So why is that in here? Why does that need to be in here then, if it doesn't apply? If we're advertising for 3 lots total, 2 new lots, then it doesn't apply. Does it even need to be here?
We recommend that we just strike that third part of the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre?
That works for me. That's where I was going.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, could I just say that part of this reason for the 6,000 and 9,000 is misunderstanding on our part, that if it is 3,000 per lot for each new additional lot, then the $6,000 does allow for a total of 3 lots. What we have been told and told repeatedly, that when you subdivide into 3 lots, they are all new lots because you've now changed the lot that you have. And that because of that, it would be $9,000. Now, if it's stated, and if we have for the record that it's $6,000 for $3,000 for 2 new lots, and that's it, then, basically you are saying that it isn't precluding us the opportunity for us to have 3 lots. And certainly in that case, we'd be happy to support it as it is stated, but as long as it says it's for 2 new lots, not just 3.
Yeah, so we can address that then. Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Would you like to go back to your seat? If you could just turn off your microphone. Are we finished asking?
I don't
Mr.
know.
Brown
I'd like to talk some more.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Sorry for Mr. Paolo, through your worship. Just a quick clarification on that new lot. So should that new lot really be reading additional lots, or is it really, as Mr. Brown has perhaps indicated, when you take a section and you create 3 new lots out of 1 previous lot, they're all new lots because none of them had that shape before. So would the affordable housing contribution be for each additional lot?
Yes, I mean, traditionally, all of our covenants have used the language new per new lot being created. Yes, that is the application of that. Yes.
Okay. Okay, was there any other questions for staff? Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to go to the recommendation. We'll do this in parts. The first one is that council give first and second reading to zoning bylaw amendment number 844 600-91 2022 to amend the zoning on the property located at 5686 Woodlands Road from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5. Moved by Counselor Betos, seconded by Counselor St. Pierre. Anything to add? Comment? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. The next part is that council directs staff to schedule the public hearing for zoning bylaw amendment number 844-600-91, 2022 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. It's moved by Counselor St. Pierre, seconded by Counselor Logans. Straightforward. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, none opposed. That's unanimous. And the final part is, and that prior to final adoption of zoning bylaw amendment number 844-600-91, 2022, the owner enter into a section 219 covenant to address cash in lieu in the amount of 6,000 for 10% affordable housing for residential developments. Moved by Counselor St. Pierre, seconded by Counselor Betos. Comments? Counselor Logans.
It's just an unfortunate situation, I think, all around, because I feel like there was a lot of miscommunication on both sides. Hopefully we can all learn from this and make the next one a bit more smooth sailing for applicants who are coming with similar issues.
Counselor St. Pierre.
I do have one further comment on the affordable housing. That's just that at some point when we have a chance to re-examine this particular policy, I'd like to see if there's some way of taking into account when affordable housing is being created like this, because we're looking at essentially creating affordable housing, but there's an additional contribution for affordable housing. It seems a little odd. So if we can actually maybe in the future take that into account, that'd be lovely.
So I'm not in support of asking for the cash in lieu, the $6,000. As it stands right now, it's meant to be a voluntary contribution. I see this as family wanting to stay within our community and supporting family. I recognize that they're going to be selling the current home, but it's strictly to develop the other two and to make improvements to those houses so the family can stay here. Of course, there's no guarantee any other things could happen. I would feel different if this was a larger developer that was coming in and had the ability to have consulting teams on staff or readily available. In this case, it's a family that's just trying to maintain a safe and secure future in our community. And so I view it differently. And I think that what they are doing is they are making that contribution. I don't see anywhere else where family members could go out and buy houses side by side in the current market right now. It's just non-existent. And that's where I think there needs to be a different avenue for what is considered larger scale, or those that are in the business and that are buying and flipping and so forth. I see it differently when family is supporting one another and living close to one another. That that creates a whole different view on things. Mr. Brown is correct that if he does live well independently, he will save our system tremendously in healthcare. I know exactly what that looks like. And I feel it's important that his daughter has a safe place to return home to, and perhaps the home that she always knew. So I'm not in support of asking for this. I don't feel it should apply in this case. Councillor Betos?
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Your Worship. I am in favor of this. Not that I want to put on a great deal of hardship on the applicant. I think he's been through a lot. I worry about setting precedent. And, you know, when you waive this requirement, which we've in the past have dealt in great length about this affordable housing, how do I, in the future, if someone comes and says it's for the family, and then I'm not saying in Mr. Brown's case, once they have it, it's all passed, and they turn around and sell it all, which they can do at any time anyways. I'm not saying that's what Mr. Brown's doing. I really commend him for what his thought process. I just worry about the precedent. If we waive this one, then we better waive them all. Yeah, I'm not in favor of. I'm in favor of proceeding with it.
And I totally hear what you're saying, and there is no way, you know, it's just I go by I've always just viewed each one before us as they come. And deal with it all individually as it is. Have we been burned as municipality? Probably. But at the same time, we don't have a set, you must do this. It's voluntary. So that's where, until that changes and we set something that's more concrete, then I'm going with it's gray area to me, and it's at council's discretion to make that call. Councillor Logans?
What's not a gray area is how pathetic our affordable housing fund is right now. And when we have applicants who are willing to come forward and willing and able to provide this to our community, I think we need to accept it and be really gracious for it. And I am grateful to the applicant for providing that because our community desperately needs it. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay. Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Okay, and that concludes this item. So if we can get the two other counselors returned, we'll be able to make it through the rest of the agenda. Okay, and item 13, no new business, correspondence requiring action. So the first one here is item 14.1. It's the e-com funding model transition. So here, just in writing, is the final letter from the minister regarding the 911 e-com costs. So I just wanted that to be highlighted on our agenda, not just within the consent agenda, because it's been a considerable amount of advocacy work to get us to this point. A lot of time behind this and a significant cost savings for a while. So, I was sort of asked recently by an editor, like, is this it? And or by a reporter, I should say, editor, reporter. And I said, well, no, it's just for now, because there's other mayors and councillors that would agree that we have a long-term agreement with the RCMP that spells out the costs over the long term. So you can't just open a contract and decide to change who pays for what. So while this covered off these next few years, I think there will be a regrouping to continue to pick up the rest of the advocacy fight through to the end, because there's still it's still a cost that I don't feel only the South Island RCMP served communities should have to pay. Why not the North Island? Why not the center? Like, why just us? So until we get all of that information, and if I had heard that, oh, the North Island is paying their share and every other RCMP detachment is paying their share, then I would view it differently. But nobody has said that definitively yet. So I don't think it's over, but we'll say thank you for now. It's great.
Through yours, I just saw this item on the agenda and just wanted to add that staff will be presenting. My Deputy Director of Finance, Ben Curry, will be at the May 24th council meeting and is preparing a report on RCMP costs. There's many moving parts to RCMP. This was one, of course, significant financial piece to it, the retro pay, year-to-date budget to actual information. We're going to staff will be preparing a standalone report for council for information at the May 24th council meeting that will flush out more of the RCMP all-encompassing costs.
Excellent. Councillor St. Pierre?
I think it move for receipt for information.
Yeah, just receipt for information.
Then I'll have a comment.
Okay, moving receipt by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your tenacity on this one. You've been pretty passionately pissed off with the way this was unfolding and haven't let go. So thanks very much.
Thank you for that recognition. Other comments?
Yeah, a bit of a question here. So there's 3.59 million spread around these 9 municipalities. How much of that would have been borne by Sooke? You know?
It was 260,000 a year, $260,000
Through your worship, I believe the full implementation was $285,000.
annually,
So
every year.
starting April 1st, 2025, we're expected to pick that up unless you do heroic work.
That depends on many
Yeah, well,
factors,
many
many that
factors.
are out of my
Someone
control.
does heroic
So
work.
potentially. Okay, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The next is 14.2, the Hope Center Community Advisory Committee. So they have an ask here for us. It is the formation. Actually, I'll turn it over to Councillor Bateman. Perhaps you can just share a bit more than what's in the letter here.
Okay, well, so speaking as the co-chair of the Sioux Homelessness Coalition, BC Housing creates community advisory committees for all of its shelters in BC, of which there are something of the order of 60. And the Hope Center, it's time for it to have a community advisory committee. And the key here is that this is a group of a broad diversity of people, as it states here, 2 to 3 community members, 2 Sooke Shelter Society members, Island Health, Sooke RCMP, District of Sooke, BC Ambulance, South Nation, and a BC Housing rep. And the key is that they meet and they problem solve, and they identify issues as they arise, and hopefully make to help the Hope Center seamlessly integrate as best it can into the immediate neighborhood. So I think tonight, the mission is to identify someone from the District of Sooke, 1 to 2 representatives from the district. And this committee, an attempt was made to form it last summer, and that was shelved for a number of reasons, but it's now come back to life. And back then there was to be a council representative and a staff representative on the advisory committee.
Okay, so I think what we're looking is to appoint a council representative, if possible. It looks here that the meetings are Wednesdays at 5. Could that be subject to change depending on what the group decides, or is it pretty strict that that's when it would be?
Oh, we're meeting as a coalition tomorrow, and BC Housing will be there, so I can ask that question. I'm sure that the group could determine the best time.
Because sometimes it's, it's in here just to create something, but then sometimes it would change, unless there was a reason, it maybe that's when it needs to be. So I'll look for interest from any members of council. Everyone put their hand up at the same time. It's the 5 o'clock meeting time is a complete barrier. Wednesday at 5. Well, then we have 2. They're looking for the first, Councillor Bateman has done a lot, so I don't want to be adding more by appointing him.
It's important as the co-chair to keep some distance.
Yes.
No.
The challenge is the staff members' availability at 5 o'clock. I think Mr. Ryder, are you volunteering? Or Chief, pardon me.
I needed to let you know that I am that staff member. I've been sort of working with Mr. McInnis in his absence, and he has brought this forward to me. I've reviewed the terms of reference, and I've sent in my notification, if you will, that I will be that person for the Wednesday night meetings. I believe it's over a 6-month term, something like that. So yeah, so that's me.
Well, thank you very much for availing yourself. It is helpful getting particularly your lens on this because of the calls that may receive. It's likely you work closely with Bylaw as well, so you'd be able to get their data, and so it would just help to provide that. So thank you for connecting there. So in this case, it would be just a council representative, in which case we could appoint one of you as a primary and the other as an alternate. And that way, should you have conflicts, vacation or other things that take your time up in the evening, that there is somebody there. What are your thoughts on that?
Sounds good to me.
It doesn't, well, who's the primary then? It's who's available,
Well,
like
I mean, I some parts of me low taking on another one, but one of my projects is down and I've had extensive experience at the need crisis line and lay counseling, dealing with a lot of these problems anyways. So I would like to stand as the primary and
That works for me.
well, geez, you rolled over easy. Yeah, I can do that.
thank you, Counselor Bettles. Also, you do a lot of work with the food bank as well. So, okay, so we have this being resolved. Thank you. So that would be that council appoint Counselor Bettles as the District of Sooke representative to the Hope Center Community Advisory Committee and Counselor Lajeunesse as the alternate representative. Moved by Counselor Bateman, seconded by Counselor St. Pierre. Many thanks to both of you. We'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chief, as well. Council verbal reports. Counselor St. Pierre.
Well, I had my first official meeting as a director at large for AVICC, that's the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, just a few days ago. It was quite good from 9 to 12 last Friday. And at this point in time, it looks like we're trying to define what sort of advocacy work AVICC will be getting itself into. And that's already been at the last conference sort of determined in terms of what it might involve. And it's obviously going to be as a convening and facilitating as opposed to directly doing the work. The group will be looking, for example, at resolutions and themes that are coming forward, ideally putting together the various local governments that are more or less interested in the same sort of resolutions and ideally getting some collaboration, sharing resources. And more to come.
Congratulations, by the way. That's something I should have highlighted in an opening remarks is your involvement with the AVICC. So congratulations, Councillor. Other members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Okay, I didn't prepare notes tonight, so I'll wing it, but the Victoria Family Court, we had a session a couple of weeks ago, and Mia Golden from the Pacific Family Resource Center, she's works with Gord McGee, City of Victoria policeman, on the MIST, the Mobile Youth Services Team. And she came to us at our request, and the committee will be doing some advocacy with this new oversight, CRD Oversight Board, which I believe Councillor Beddoes is aligned with, possibly. The Mayor Murdoch and Screech are the chairs of that. So we'll advocate with them and the Attorney General and Mike Farnworth and others. And then I was at the OCP session on Saturday, which was very lively as reported out here, and heard from a lot of people. And it'll take me a while to absorb it all and process it, and really look forward to next Monday night's chapter and verse review.
Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to put a thank you to the rest of council too. I understand not all could make the OCP, and I understand the reasons for it, but I did appreciate having a large council contingent yourself there. And I think as much as got chewed up pretty good, I'm very pleased with the performance of staff and council there. So I thought it was a very enlightening day. Thanks.
Excellent. Councillor Logans?
The JDF committee is not meeting, so for the past couple months, I guess. So it's a bit quiet there, but I did go to the OCP meeting on Saturday. I thought it was a really positive event. I saw a lot of people engaging with the council and staff, and I think the feedback was pretty much what we thought it would be, at least from what I've heard so far. So I think we're still heading in the right direction, and look forward to more discussion on it.
Councillor Lajeunesse, any comments? Okay, thank you. I don't have much myself other than, what was I going to add here? Some work, those of you that have been involved with the Sioux Solution Labs, some follow-up completion work is occurring this week, some peer feedback. I've also been involved on a following access to justice. There's been a special committee chaired by the Chief Justice on the transformation of family court. So it's transforming how family court is handled in BC law. So there is a final meeting, but unfortunately it conflicts with a special council meeting. So I won't be able to attend the final wrap-up session there, but the whole intent, I think I've spoken to it before, is just that there needs to be a change into how family law is handled. So that work is concluding. This Wednesday is McHappy Day, so you may see me at the drive-through in the early morning. So, oh, it's never worked in fast food and it's early, but I said I'd do it. So, oh, at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then it could be 6 to 7:30. It depends on what my husband's schedule is and who's going to do the school bus piece. Parents listening out there, be sure to register your child for school bus services. I'm hearing that trustees have advised that they have hired more drivers, but there's more children as well. And so enrollment is really growing, and that transportation piece is vital, as is after school care, which is at a premium and hard to find. So just some pieces to those viewing. I'm sure those families have other things to do at this hour, but I just want to recognize that that is a challenge out in the community. So on that note, we'll just wrap it up. Congratulations again to those two youth that did so well sailing, and looking forward to hearing more about their successes. And thank you, Councillor Beddoes, for reminding me about that. Okay, on that note, a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.